Hello, welcome to another Inclus Academy. My name is Mikael Langivainio. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Inclus, and I'm joined here today by my colleague Jannika.
Hi.
And today we have an interesting topic that we've been waiting eagerly to talk about, mastering the risk workshop facilitation with Inclus. The main idea is to learn some tips and tricks about the facilitation techniques, how to prepare for a workshop, how to set the right mindset in the workshops, and then concretely how to use Inclus in support of the facilitation of the workshop itself. So we are not focusing on all the features and functionalities of Inclus. We are focusing now today on the sort of visualization parts and how to facilitate lively discussions around risk management. If I start here first, just by sharing some thoughts, how to foster common understanding with digital tools through facilitated dialogue, and starting from challenges. So typically we see in organization that we don't simply have enough time to think and communicate around risks. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of looming risks perhaps identified, but we don't have necessarily the platform or the methods or tools how to voice them. We often see also that the risk management process is quite burdensome. You have to identify, assess, analyze, prioritize, do an action planning, do the mitigation, monitoring, and the process can actually fall down in many stages of the process. So we want to maintain a sort of a steady flow of actions throughout the whole process. Often we also see people losing focus in risk management sessions, that you talk about 2 or 3 risks for the whole time, and then you don't notice that you haven't talked about 20 others, and you haven't even actually prioritized the risks properly either. We sometimes see that there's too many risks to actually sort of constructively handle, and it's okay. And therefore you have to select those risks that you will discuss in the workshop, because probably you don't have enough time to go through all of the risks with a meaningful dialogue. And therefore a preparation and engagement of the participants before the workshop is important, and we'll show how to do it with Inclus, so that in the workshop you can focus on the high priority risks and those risks that you have a lot of deviation on. What we also see often is that the risk assessments are fairly superficial. Maybe one person has put quite hastily the impact and probability assessments, and there's not too much of analysis or dialogue around risks. And sometimes we have too much dialogue on the assessments of the risk, whether this is impact 4 or 5, and we sort of tend to get to these sort of arm wrestlings or debates about the severity of the risk. But then we lose focus on the action planning part. And typically we can actually get the consensus better on the action planning part, and it's okay if we don't have consensus always on the assessment side of things. And that often leads to weak ownership of the actions, and we don't know who's actually responsible of what. Therefore, we don't actually monitor or follow up on them. So it's important to go through also the accountabilities and sort of roles and rules around the sort of whole process, how to continue with the risk management, which is actually the most important part of risk management, is the management part of the risks. The aim of risk management workshop is not simple in a sense. The aim is to see into the future together. If we are talking about a construction project, we might look at 1 year time span, and we have to see what will happen in the next year, what could go wrong in that project. We still are trying to figure out what the future should look like after successful project. But then we can also then do sort of a backcasting from the successful project, what could go wrong. We can think about what we already know that could go wrong. So you can sort of think in 2 ways. You can think about the future objective and then think about how things can go wrong, or you can start from today and foresee what we already know that could go wrong. So the aim is to think creatively and critically, both, so divergent and convergent thinking, And therefore, it's important to discuss the topics openly and create an atmosphere where you can raise the issues or risks on the table and actually discuss what is meaningful. And it's important to start with the objective, as risk is an uncertainty on an objective, and that can have negative or positive consequences. So we also want to look at the opportunities as well. We tend to lose sometimes focus on the objective or on the positive side of things, as we see risks as equal to threats or hazards, but actually many risks also have potential positive effects, in other words, opportunities, and we often want to raise this into the discussion as well. The objective is to create a shared situation picture where we are going. Like mentioned, we don't need a consensus on the assessments, but we need to have an ownership of the actions and more or less a consensus of what we need to do about the risks. But it's okay not always to have an exact same view on the probability or impact of the risks. And usually it turns out that people get more aligned when we start talking about how to actually manage the risks. And some characteristics of a risk management workshop audience. We often have busy people in business life. People are not necessarily present physically or mentally in the workshops. They are looking emails and so on. Therefore, we need to be able to engage people prior to the workshop if possible, gather their views and viewpoints if they're not able to participate. Some people are coming in and out, and sometimes we can't do anything about that. But typically want to reserve that time for the risk workshop and get everybody engaged. But because this is a reality, therefore digital tools to collect the risk information before the workshop is really important, as we get all of the views into one situational picture. We also have extroverts and introverts. Often the loudest dominates, and you want to actually hear also the more silent ones. And with Inclus, you can sort of select also their viewpoints or their assessment that, Mark, you said this, you assessed it like this. Can you expand on that a bit? And then you get also the more silent people open up, because they might actually have more information about some of the risk than the loudest people. You also have organizational hierarchies and risk culture varying quite a lot. So basically from open and sort of straightforward cultures to reserved and cautious cultures. And we also want to be sure that everybody can and dare to voice their opinions and viewpoints on the risk. And sometimes we actually use anonymous assessment forms before the workshops. Typically, we don't advise that because we want to keep an open and transparent process, but it is an option to sometimes do the assessments also anonymously. We have different professional backgrounds. So the tribes in, for example, construction projects, you might have architects who are more like artists, and then you might have engineers who are very process-oriented. And the diversity of experiences is actually a value, because they bring different viewpoints to the risk table. So we want to embrace that diversity in risk management, because it gets us closer to the truth of the assessment. We have different personalities. Some are risk averse, some are tolerant, some are maybe reckless, some are really careful. It doesn't matter. We want to engage all of them into the process to discuss the risks. We have individual and group level biases. So individual might be that some is really fixated on the knowledge that they already have on those risks, and they sort of tend to have a confirmation bias or mirroring effect or anchoring bias and so on. And then we might have group level biases like the groupthink phenomena, where somebody says something and everybody starts to agree, and we always want to agree. So we want to break those both level of biases by individual assessments first. Then we look at the individual assessments in the workshop, and then we have the group discussion based on the individual thinking. So some tips to the risk workshops. Setting the right tone and mindset is really important. And it's not about being right and wrong. Of course, we want to get as exact assessments as possible, but as risk management is about assessing the uncertain future events, it's hard to be exact many times. So we want to be approximating the truth in a sense together, and genuinely try to see around the corner what could happen, and it demands that we listen to each other. We don't want to second guess after risk realizes. Sometimes people said, hey, I knew that this would happen. Well, why didn't you raise your opinion? So please encourage people to bring their viewpoints into the table now when we actually can manage the risks. And in a sense, all risks belong to everybody until they're delegated. We also see those that people don't think that I should be talking about finances or something else. If you see a problem, you should raise it. And as a facilitator, to try to be as clear as possible in your communication, often calm, easy going. So the collected way is good to go about, but of course bring your own personality, do it how you like to do it, but try to be clear in the communication when you actually then facilitate. So engage the participants, stimulate the discussion. You can use Inclus with various ways how to do that. We'll show you soon how to use the different modalities and visualizations for that. And we have to embrace the fact that some risks include conflict potential. For example, in construction projects or some other project where you have a lot of stakeholders, there's possibility that those risks even become legal challenges. So in a sense, good risk management is also a form of conflict prevention. And we might get into quite tense workshops, but it's not a problem, and you need to sort of embrace that. And sometimes we work beyond risk management. We talk about risks that have realized, which is more of an issue management thing, or some things that are really about to happen and we should have a continuity plan on them and so on. That's not per se risk management in a sense, because we want to see those risks that are uncertainties against our objectives in the future. But you can't avoid this sort of a process flow from issue management to continuity planning either, always. So it's important to sort of create ownership to solve the issue together and see conflict as a property, in a sense that when the parties themselves and the stakeholders themselves analyze together the challenges, asking people's views on the consequences, on what it happened, what it caused to different parties, or what it can cause. You should allow also some emotions to go, because people don't listen before they are listened to if they are emotionally strained. So you have to allow that and then listen everybody and then go to the actions, then repair and how to repair and avoid the damage in the future. And the solutions may actually become quite naturally from that discussion. But don't be afraid of that, because actually the facing the reality together is actually empowering. So risk management is truly a management and leadership tool, how to get the organization and people more resilient together when they observe and sort of move towards the future together. Then some really practical tips on how to prepare for the workshop. So of course it's always the workshop is part of a wider process. So define the objective of the session, explain the risk management year clock if you have it, brief what has led to this workshop and how do you continue after this workshop, create a step-by-step plan, but be a bit flexible. We need to be sometimes quite strict with the time use, but also having some flexibility is important. You can select the visualizations on Inclus, how to use or what to use in the workshop, which risk you would handle first, the most critical ones typically, what to focus on after that, and then using the time efficiently, sort of a balance between dialogue on the nature of the risk against the action planning. We want to get into the action planning, but we want to allow also discussion on the risk nature itself. But hope you got some ideas from this. I will hand over to my colleague Jannika, who can go through the Inclus settings and visualization that you can use in risk facilitation.
Thank you, Miki. I'll share my screen. Okay, so we'll be focusing on the visualization part today, but just to remind you, or if you haven't seen the tool yet, how we get to the actual visualizations. So first, we have the risk identification form that is sent out to participants beforehand. So this is the first step, and this makes it possible for the participants to see the list of all the risks and then flag the risks that they feel are most important and that they want to bring forward to the actual assessment. And then after that, we have the actual risk assessment form that is sent out to the participants beforehand. And these are now then the risks that have moved on from the identification to the actual assessment. And here you can have different criteria. Some of the very common ones are risk impact and risk likelihood. So after everyone has filled in the assessment form, we can then move on to look at the actual results of the assessments. And there you can go by clicking on this visualizations button right here. And here you can save different report pages for different purposes. I have the one I have prepped here. And then you can also filter in this stage if there is some, for example, risk categories you want to leave out from the actual visualizations. So that you can do here. I have now one risk category that I left out, which is quality control issues. You can also choose to filter based on sessions or groups or so on. Then we also have different result pages that you can choose based on the ones that are most suitable for you and your needs. And you can, of course, use several ones on the visualization page. But let's focus now on this heat map here. So these are now the results from the risk assessment form that would then have been sent out to the participants. This is now the latest assessment, which you can see here on the right side. We have 3 different sessions here. So we have had one for Q1, Q2, and Q3. So this is now for Q3 and is the latest one. You also have the option to choose a bit how you have the style here on the page. So you can have the risk name visible, which makes it quite busy with these many risks. You can have the number like this, and then also a sleeker version like this when you have many risks. But here on the right side, you can also choose if you want to look at one specific category at a time, or for example, 2 categories at a time, or if you prefer to look at all your risks. You also have risk tags that you can add, either manual tags that you can add, or then these ones that are called smart tags, which are then automatically assigned to the risks based on the scores that they have received in the assessment. And then we also have down here, we have groups. So this is if you want to have a background question in the actual assessment form. So for example, a background group. So you could see here how different units have answered the actual assessment. And this can also be quite good to go through and see that if like why the answers differ between different groups and what the cause could be for that. We scroll up a bit. We also have this analysis tab here. And this makes it possible for us to just, for example, filter based on the top 5 risks. So those are then the one highlighted here in the heat map. We can also choose to filter based on the answers that have the most variance. So for example, let's choose 6 of the ones with the biggest variance. So this means that they are the risks that the participants have assessed very differently. So when you click on the risks, you'll see here that each square here, that's one individual participant who has assessed the risk. And in this example, you see that, well, the answers couldn't basically be more different. So these are very good to go through all the risks with big variance, and also discuss there that what's the cause and what could we do and why is it like this. And because in this example, we have quite many risks. So just to make it a bit more clear, I'll just filter, actually I'll filter based on the highest, the high and moderate risks to make it a bit more clear. And then we could choose here to compare the results to the previous assessment. So now we are comparing Q2 and Q3 assessment results. So this makes the visualization so that we have the circle here that's white, that's the previous assessment, and then you see an arrow going to the current score. So this makes it easy to see which risks are increasing and which are the ones that are decreasing. But if we focus now on this newest assessment, we can start going through the risks one by one in the workshop. And it's good to start with the highest risks in case we don't have time to go through all of them. So then we can just click on the risk. And here again, we see the variance in the answers. And then here on the right side, we get this table here where we can choose to edit the risk if we want to. If there are, for example, if we want to make some edits to the descriptions based on what we are discussing, if these are custom fields, so these can be added. So you could, for example, add a field here also that's, for example, discussion notes. So you can then write down what you are discussing during the workshop. So you can make edits here. Then you can see the tasks that have previously been assigned for this particular risk. So you can then have a discussion about the tasks here and to see that what's the status, if there's been any changes. You could, for example, go in here in the task, and if you see that, okay, but we already did this, we could just change the status here to completed, or edit the task owner here if this person is no longer relevant. And it's good to assign the task owners because they will get notifications also that they have been assigned a task, and also reminders about the task, so that it's not something you just put in the system, but you also get reminded to actually move forward with the task.
And just to mention that, for example, if there's a comment on the square, there's a yellow halo, and you can activate that, and you can see I just added that comment from my tab here. So I could write basically anything here, and then you can see the comment in real time as well. So you can facilitate while people are doing the assessment sometimes, but typically we are gathering the assessments before the workshop as well.
Yes. Then you also have the possibility to add new tasks during the workshop. So you can either click here to add a new task and just manually write in a task here, or you can choose to use AI to suggest tasks for you. So when you click that, it thinks for a bit, and then it gives ideas on tasks that could be relevant. So we can just choose one here and add that. So you see it's added here as a task, and then you can go in and edit here and add a task owner, and let's put me here, and then also a timeline for the task, like that. And you can add several tasks here at the same time. And then you also have the option to edit the score right here from this view. So you can just go in here, you see that you're in the latest session, so the correct session, and then you can just go and change the score from this view, which also makes it possible for you to actually assess the risks together as a group without even filling in the assessment form first, if that's a way you prefer to do.
Or if you want to sort of use a Delphi method, that you first collect the panel of the experts and then you do a corrective assessment based on the discussion and so on.
Yes. And then also, if during the discussion you realize that there's actually a risk missing, you can also add a new risk from here and just write it in here and then save it. And then after that, you can actually go in and score the risk right here during the workshop. And okay, and then I can just scroll through a few different result views that we have here. So this is where you can see the change over time. So if you want to look at specific risks and just have a very visual view of how they have changed over time. You also get like bar plot based on, for example, the risk score, and this is now filtered based on the highest risks. And then we also have tasks here, so task coverage, and then a task Gantt chart, so you can see what the status is for all the tasks you currently have, and you can go in on the different tasks and just edit them right here in this view. And then I'm mindful we're running out of time, but I'll show you still the comment part here. So this is where you'll see all the comments that have come in when people have filled in the assessment form beforehand. So you can see the comments per risk, and you can open them here, and then you can generate an AI summary for each individual risk. Like this, you can make changes to it, and then you can save it here. And then you can also choose to make a summary of all the different comments that have come in and see what it turns up here. So you get the different action points, and then based on this, you can also have a discussion and see if there are some other risks that you still want to add, or for example, some other tasks that would be good to add based on people's comments here. Thank you. Miki, anything you want to add?
No, that's great. Maybe just to add that often we want to look at, if you refresh your page, I guess Jeff made some changes there, but if you show the visualization below that, yes. So we sometimes want to have more, viewpoints on this course. So you can change actually the sort of axes as well. So you can see the opportunities now on the risk score, which would be the impact times likelihood, would be on the y-axis. So the higher it is now, the more impactful it would be, and then the more right-hand side it is, the sort of bigger opportunities it also sort of consists of. So this is another way to also incentivize sort of, especially the leadership, to get interested in the risk, where you can also say that, hey, if we manage this risk well, we also have these and these opportunities in them. So that's often a really, really powerful way to sort of facilitate the discussion as well, and interesting also. Great. I think we have covered most of it. If there's any questions, you can post them to the chat. We have only like 2 minutes for the session still, but I would encourage you to send any questions to us, and we'll come back to you individually also. So this is to actually educate you on the tool and give you some tips and tricks, but we understand that in your particular process you might have certain questions and settings that you might puzzle with. Naturally, we went through a lot of different visualizations. As a facilitator, you typically select 1 or 2 visualization that you sort of carefully select, and then you go through them slowly and carefully and while you're facilitating. So we wouldn't be using all these features in one session, but it was how to actually prepare for the session, that you have these options depending on the objective of the session, what you can use. So please do share if you have any questions to us, and we truly want to provide you also an opportunity to have a demo session with us. So if you have any questions, how this tool could be suiting to your risk management processes, do contact us. Also, if you want to download the newest ebook that we published about best practices in digitalizing your enterprise risk management, you can also download the booklet from here. And as customers, you can always contact us from the support@inclus.com or directly with your dedicated customer success management specialist. But very happy that you came, and happy to spread the joy word of risk management. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.